Hi, this is Callan Bentley. Welcome back for another Smart Figure. In this video, we're going to take a look at the Yellowstone caldera. By the time we're done with it, you should be able to describe roughly how the Yellowstone caldera formed. Yellowstone National Park is a pretty amazing place. It's got extraordinary large animals in great numbers, from grizzly bears to the bison you see here in this picture. But another thing you see here in this picture is that in the background there's a whole bunch of steam rising up from the landscape. That is a hint about the tremendous reservoir of magma that's just a short distance below the surface. If we look at a map of Yellowstone, this is what we see. Basically, the park is mostly in Wyoming and a little bit of neighboring Montana and Idaho. In the middle of the park is a large feature called the Yellowstone caldera. And this is our main story that we want to look at today, is how this caldera formed. But within the caldera, there are also two features called resurgent domes. Like we said, Yellowstone has a large reservoir of magma that's very close to the surface, and basically when that magma chamber inflates, it causes the surface above it to bow upwards or deform. That can fracture the rock there, and then those fractures can actually serve like plumbing, a conduit for magma to move up towards the surface. Lava moves up through those conduits and then erupts at the surface. Some of that flows over the landscape as lava flows. Part of it gets shot off into the air where it gets carried away by the wind. And some of the pyroclastic material ends up flowing sideways over the landscape as a pyroclastic flow. But with all that material removed from the magma chamber, there's less stuff down there to hold up the overlying crust. So big blocks of crust drop downward into that partially emptied magma chamber. This results in the landscape that we see today, where there's this large central feature that's downdropped relative to the surroundings. And you can also see that it's surrounded by some of that pyroclastic material that has been stuck together into the rock called welded tuff. The story is not quite over yet, though, because there are two additional modifications that Yellowstone has seen since the last caldera-forming eruption. The first is lava flows. So some magma continues to make its way to the surface where it flows out over the surface as a series of lava flows. And then the other thing that you can see is over here on the right, there's some areas where blocks of rock are actually being pushed up by the magma underneath them. These are the resurgent domes we talked about earlier. So if you look at a map of Yellowstone, there are two resurgent domes in the park today. One is located over by the famous geyser Old Faithful, and the other one is located just north of where the Yellowstone River leaves Yellowstone Lake. Now that's an interesting situation because as the river flows across the resurgent dome, there's actually rock rising up out of the bottom of the river, and that has created some new rapids in one section of that river. For review, one thing you could ask yourself is what you might predict for Yellowstone's future given what you know about its history. Thank you very much for your attention. This has been another Smart Figure.